I'm Marci Alboher, and we're really thrilled that you're here for this conversation about what happens when teens and older allies collaborate to create change. I serve on the leadership team of CoGenerate. If you are an old friend, welcome. It's so good to see you. If you're new to us, we're a national nonprofit dedicated to bridging generational divides. I'm 59 years old and I'm sharing my age because it relates to the topic of the conversation tonight. So, our research tells us that people of all ages want to work across generations to improve their communities. But interestingly, Gen Z wants it the most. Every generation in our research reported that they cannot find opportunities to work across generations. And that is a top obstacle to working together for change. Interestingly, all generations reported communications challenges, but Gen Z twice as much as the other generations. Given that we are living in the most age diverse time in history, in our history, we have equal numbers of people at every age, from birth to 70 and beyond. We feel that it's crucial to equip youngers with opportunities and skills they need to collaborate across generations. Certainly, older people need the same support. As someone who is embracing my age, my silver hair, I strongly feel that the place to start as an elder is to listen.
Hey Marcy, I am Dillon St. Bernard. Hey, I'm Dillon St. Bernard, I'm 25 and a CoGenerate Impact Fellow. So, for the last several months, I have been on quite the journey to interview and talk to 26 teen leaders about what they do and don't want from older allies. So today, you're going to hear a few of their stories and how we all can really just learn from them.
So before we go any further, we really want to acknowledge our profound gratitude to our funders for this work, the Bezos Family Foundation and the Eisner Foundation, um, real partners in doing this work. I want to explain a fun tool that we're going to use. It's called Mentimeter, and it is going to be our way to make this program as interactive as possible. So you will now see a QR code on the screen and a numeric code. So there are two ways to use Mentimeter. You can either point your phone's camera at the QR code or just go to menti.com and point your phone's and type in the code that you see on the slide, which is 88228132. That's going to also live at the top of every screen as we go through the slides in this presentation, so you won't lose the opportunity to find it. Once you're in, you will see a question on your device, and we want you to answer that question. That's going to happen many times. I can see some people have already figured out how to do it. Yay. And the first question is a poll of how old are the people who have showed up here tonight. So I'm curious about who is in the audience with us. So by decade, we've asked you to tell us how old you are. All right, it's coming in like a horse race in real time, which is so much fun. Wow, our so far the winners are really people between 60 and 80 years old. We have very few people under 40 in the room right now. Let's see. Let's see if that changes at all. And obviously our panelists haven't voted, because if they did, I think we would at least have those first two slots a little higher. Yeah, this might be, if you haven't voted, try to get into Mentimeter and do it.
Awesome.
All right, this is good to know.
Great. Yeah. So we really got to see the various ages in this conversation. It's great to see kind of folks being willing to just come here and listen. I think that's a huge, huge piece of this puzzle. So before we discuss the findings, we're going to hear directly from the team. So this is a video produced by Team DSB, a Gen Z-led creative agency. Hi, I'm Dillon St. Bernard. I'm 25 and a CoGenerate Impact Fellow. CoGenerate's vision is to bridge generational divides. For the last several months, I've been interviewing 25 teens about what they do and do not want from older allies? Let's jump into it.
What do you think an adult can do to be there and be supportive of teenagers?
I'm a part of the Student Mental Health Alliance at my school, and we're currently pushing for some mental health policies. And sometimes, like, a frustration that I experience is when we push for certain ideas and administration will probably just say, oh yes, that's a great idea, but then never really do anything to follow through with that idea. And then that's when the adults come in and they help us push it even further so that the administration can help us implement it into reality.
So Petra, tell me about the organization that you're volunteering with.
I volunteer at the Pasadena Senior Center, and I work helping with tech support.
Have you made any friends?
Either people learning about my life, or a lot of people like to tell their stories about when they were in high school.
That's how they relate to you, because
Yeah.
they were high school students.
Yeah.
The first time I really kind of knew you when you came to volunteer for the organization Olive Community Services.
Yeah, I came and I volunteered at Olive and I loved it and I realized that's what I want to do. So then I created my club, Golden Connections, at my high school, and we do intergenerational activities with seniors and teens.
Remember when you started in Intergenerational again, man?
I think 2022. This is my third season.
This is my fourth now. This band in particular gets intergenerational in a way so that I get to interact with folks younger than me.
But I think something that does come naturally to intergenerational relationships is learning and telling stories. And even though you're not maybe of the age of telling stories from the good old days when you were a lot younger, I think it's still just good to hear about other people's experiences and what they did when they were my age. I think of the jazz setting and the music setting is very intimidating and very scary. And I know it can be, but being in such a supportive, community-oriented, intergenerational band just really showed me that it's not so scary. And adults are just like you in 20 years or 40 years or whatever. There's not really any crazy difference except maybe they pay taxes and you don't, they have a job and you don't.
So how do you like working with seniors?
I love it. It's so fun. They love to treat us with respect. They don't always treat us like we're their grandchildren. They'd like to treat us on the same level and speak to us like we're just people with ideas and passions. And I really appreciate that. And it makes me feel like I want to be involved in the conversation.
In my intergenerational big band, sometimes with the teenagers, they're more shy, but if I reach out to them and I express an interest in them, then they respond. What do you think that older adults can do in terms of setting the tone when you have interactions with them that would put teenagers at ease, make them more comfortable and willing to share some of themselves with the older person?
Sometimes just taking time to listen, because when we have such different views, even just talking about it and finding something to connect on is really important.
I do have other friends who are involved in these kinds of things, like youth civic engagement, but they do often comment about how they're the only youth in the room. And ultimately, that could be a little unhealthy, considering the fact that we're not really being considered as somebody else who's equal to adults. I think it's very important that adults take in youth perspectives, because the society that we're living in is vastly different. Approach the situation you would approach an adult, because teens are not very much different, and the teens also have a variety of fresh new perspectives to bring.
As a very young child, I did not like being treated like I didn't matter, so it was always important to me as my kids and my stepkids were growing up to understand their perspective and to not invalidate their feelings about things.
Nowadays, teens are with the teens and the seniors are with the seniors and everyone's with their own generation. But I think the most powerful thing is when we combine. We're not from a different planet, we're just a different generation.
Dillon, I'll hand it to you in a minute, but I have to say I'm still watching the ages come through the chat, and it's really kind of comforting. I really appreciate that so much of the audience is in their 50s, 60s, 70s. This is exactly the audience we wanted to reach with this report. So
Yes.
that's fantastic.
Yeah, and again, the willingness to come and listen in and see, this is just a co-generational environment, and I think as we're going to find out, teens are very much excited to have these conversations. So again, just thank you for joining and being interested. And with that, nearly 76% of Gen Z which is a higher percentage than any other generation, say that they wish they had more opportunities to work across. So that's what you're seeing on screen. There's really a want and an interest in this, Marci.
Yeah, and and listen, as the voice of an elder here in this room, I can say with total confidence that older people also want to collaborate with young people, but they often feel nervous and uncomfortable in being in especially teen-oriented spaces. Um, so I guess we have a question for the audience chat. It's going to be another one of these, what I'm calling the Mentimeter moments. But you can answer in the chat or using the Mentimeter tool and just hit refresh on your phone. But have you found ways to collaborate across generations in your civic or volunteer work? So we are really curious about that. Seeing some answers in the chat as well as yes and not enough. Majority yes. I mean, what this says to me is we have the right people in the room here.
Indeed. Indeed, indeed. I'm really excited to see this number, and I think I think we're also seeing we want to do more, not enough. So there also seems to be this excitement again to do this. So I really want to jump into our conversation. So I think part of why you may have joined, of course, is to hear from some teens about what they want and what they don't want, perhaps. So we're going to jump into that conversation. So once again, I've been, for the last, I would say, 8 months, have been jumping into conversations with 26 teens. And today we have a handful of those teens who are joining us across the key insights from this report, which one of our team members will put in the chat just so folks have it kind of handy. And there'll also be a slide on the shortly. So you'll notice 5 key themes: respect, listening, authenticity, energy, and shared power. So these are the key insights. We're not your children. Listen, period. Don't invite us for optics. We'll match your energy, and we want the power to change things. These being key themes that we're going to talk about today. And I'll just note, so as you are hearing from the teens and young people today, please feel free to pop your questions into the little Q&A section in Zoom. If you don't know how to do it, also you can just put it in the chat and we'll figure it out for you. But let's jump into that conversation with that first insight. We are not your children. So I want to bring Leena up on our kind of virtual stage here. Hey, Leena. So Leena, you were telling me about this as we were talking. Your club collaborated on Intergenerational Summer Camp taught by grandmas. So I want you to just tell the audience about how that partnership with older allies got started and what made it feel like a real collaboration.
So it started when I was 11. I began volunteering at our senior center, doing really like simple things, serving tea and helping make crafts, and just talking with the seniors and learning about their lives. So over the years, I got to know them as whole people, not just older adults in a program. And the camp didn't come from me walking in and like saying, here's a program I want to launch. It came from me listening and like forming friendships over time. It came from building trust in the community and to notice what actually mattered to them. I saw them as creators and they saw me that way too. And that's why the summer camp felt like a true collaboration, not just like one generation showing up with all the answers, but both generations bringing something to the table. We weren't solving a problem for each other. We were solving a problem with each other, which I think is really important to note. And it wasn't one-sided. They taught us their craft and we showed them new ways to share it, like documenting the sessions, sharing it on the news and conferences, and like putting their stories on social media. And now even speaking about it here, the impact didn't stay between those 4 walls. Their voices and traditions reached people beyond our little community.
I love that, Leena. Thanks for naming that. And then, Leena, how old are you?
I'm 15 years old.
Okay. Just wanted to make note of it, and as folks are jumping in, folks will kind of say their ages. But I just really appreciate that note, and I think there is, just based on the insight and just some additional context and color about this insight about we are not your children. So, a lot of the conversation I had was that from teens were that adults sometimes only knew how to relate to young people through the lens of their own kids. And the real focus for us, you know, in terms of the insight was how do we zoom out and also build more opportunities for that to be not just you and your own kid, that kind of relationship, but this being a little bit more expansive. Again, this human first element that you're naming, Leena, and you mentioned so well. So thank you, Leena. I want to bring in Angel. So our second insight was about listening. So listen, period. So Angel, you know, so many teens in this project said that they really just want to be heard from older allies. So can you share a time when an older person truly listened to you, and how did that change your willingness to really disengage?
Yeah, hi, I'm Angel. I'm 16 years old, and I think I want to share about how this September my organization, which I founded, Civicate Youth, and I were at the Los Angeles Congress of Neighborhoods, where a lot of community leaders gathered to share their experiences acting as local leaders, part of local governments. And there I was able to lead a workshop. And after my workshop session, I was really like pleasantly surprised to see a lot of the older leaders who were there in the audience coming up to me. And like they basically showed me a lot of appreciation. And some of them even also asked me to work on a couple youth engagement projects with them. And I think this was really important because it truly showed me that these older allies were definitely listening to me, sharing my ideas and my own experiences through my workshop, because it was kind of a workshop where I would tell the audience members about my experience as a youth representative and sometimes like one of the only youth in the room when we're having local government meetings. And I was really glad to hear that they wanted to actually work with me because I've had so much experience being the only young person in the room and often just being in the sidelines. And they were open to working with younger people, and I could really see that they were genuinely listening to us as well. So this really made me feel seen and heard as a young person, and I think it really motivated me to continue my work for youth civic engagement.
Awesome. And then Angel, how old are you? Did you mention that? I just want to make sure.
I'm 16. Yeah.
16. All right, so we have a wide range of teens here, and I just want to emphasize that I love this point, Angel, around, you know, again, there's a theme here around just like humanity. So there are some themes, if you're familiar with CoGenerate's work around, that are some, you know, Venn diagrams between this and the Youth Leaders Report, and I think the Older Leaders Report, all of this is, we want to see each other as humans. For teens, they really want to be seen as true collaborators and peers. So I think you're naming some of that around like, let's just start the conversation and let's see what we can build and what we can learn from one another. So thank you so much, Angel, for that. Let's jump into Insight 3. Don't invite us for optics. So I want to bring in Elijah, who again got to talk to as part of this report. So Elijah, you work with adults in civic and legislative settings. How do you tell when your voice really matters and is impactful?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. Hi, everyone. My name is Elijah Lee, and I am recently turned 18 as of December 5th, and so very excited to, officially be an adult in this space. And I really love this question because I think it's something that both Angel and Lena touched on, right? And I think it's really important, especially when we're in places like this, because we're having these really important conceptual conversations about what is intergenerational collaboration? What does that look like, right? We're having these huge conversations about what does it mean to be empathetic to people that are, 40 years younger or older than you. And so when we're having these like larger conversations, I think it's so important to say, okay, what does this look like in practice, right? And I think this is something that Lena and Angel, like I said, talked about, and it's something that I definitely have learned over the years, right? When we're working with legislators in my youth-led political advocacy organization, we're talking to legislators. There are definitely those that are, wanting to meet with us because they know they're going to get a cool picture out of it that they can then post come November. And there are definitely those that are going to want to meet with us because they need to check the box of saying, I met with this year's group of young people. And I think that for us, it's really easy to identify who these people are because they all have one thing in common. They never act on what we say, right? We go to these meetings and we share studies and we share research and we talk about what's important to us. And then we leave and they don't write the bill. They don't co-sponsor the bill, right? They don't bring that message home to their kids and talk to their kids. They don't invest in those communities themselves, right? And so I think that when we talk about how do we, help support young people, how do we show young people that their voices are heard, I think the answer is pretty simple. You act, right? You do it, you show it, because our actions at the end of the day do speak louder than our words. And so I think for us, it's really about how can you carry young voices into the room, right? How can you share their message? How can you take the ideas that we're talking about on calls just like this one and bring it back to your own organizations to spread that information? And so for me, I think that that's always a really important element of intergenerational collaboration. And I think it's kind of the glue that binds us together in those ways.
Yeah, I appreciate that so much, Elijah. And I think there's a few kind of themes here that I think are also in this kind of longer form report and in the videos. Just having one teenager in the room is also not enough. So that you can't you can start there, but how do we build? And then I think we're thinking here about how do we build long-term, thoughtful engagement, because that's an important piece, is ensuring that this is really a consistent focus, and also how we can get teens earlier in the process. Because I've also been on the other side as a teen and also as somebody who works with organizations. It's like, okay, we have a decision, so let's get some teen input now. Let's get some young people to offer some thoughts, and that's also not the right approach. So really appreciate you illuminating some of that. So Marci, I know you have a Mentimeter moment.
Yes. Okay, inspired by what we just heard from Elijah, what is one word that describes how authentic partnership feels? Do it in the comment, do it on the Menti, although the Menti is really fun, so I'm encouraging you to hit refresh and get back into Menti. Good point, Sheila, that seniors are also sometimes used for optics. A lot of this goes both ways. I want to just point that out. And happy birthday, Elijah. Yes, yes. By the way, I'm capturing the questions that we will get to later, so I see some of them that are throwing in there. Okay, we got a little kind of a fulfilling respect, heard, stimulating, listening before speaking, alive, equals, reciprocal, motivating, safe, supportive, follow through. I think if we had a word cloud, I would make that very big. Progress, interplay, trust, commitment to learning from each other, respectful, vulnerable. Yeah, wait, there's more. Mutual, empowering, listen and act, respect, just come up many times before. Mutual connection, calm, listener. Feel free to keep these coming. But back to you, Dillon.
Yeah, and I see some more even in the chat, like think calm and mutual connection. So I think in terms of mutual connection, I think there's this connection between Insight 4. So Insight 4, and I'm going to bring Leena back into this conversation. Insight 4 being that we will match your energy. So Leena, you said that the tone of how people collaborate in these collaborations really matter. So what does it look like for when adults and teens set a collective tone of curiosity and safety as well?
Yeah, so I actually have an example from our first day of summer camp. One of the grandmas quietly told me that she was actually worried the teens wouldn't care to learn about sewing. And hearing her admit that made me feel really safe to say, well, I'm worried no teens are even going to show up. And that taught me that adults really do set the tone. When the tone is like warm and welcoming, teens feel it and we open up too. And her honesty didn't make her seem unsure. It made me feel safe to share. And so, yes, we'll absolutely match the energy in the room. If adults come in curious and seniors come in curious and human, not trying to be perfect, it makes it so much easier for us to take risks and show up as our full selves.
Yeah, and I think, Leena, I think this was a theme across several different conversations is, teens are very much in this regard, a little bit of asking for permission. Is like, is it safe for me to like be myself in this realm, and they're looking to adults in this way. So, and I think once we have that established relationship, then all right, now it's open. But I think if we're thinking about like how as an adult can I open up this space to teens, it's like setting up the container in which teens can really activate, and then let's start building. I really appreciate that insight, Leena. And finally, for insight 5, we want the power to change things. Elijah, going to bring you back into this as well. So, Elijah, you've been leading things, kind of read your bio since you were 10 years old. So, I am curious, like, what does sharing power look like to you now?
Yeah, so I mean, I love this question just because, I get a chance to kind of like reflect and look back and think about who I was now 8 years ago. And I think that that's like first really cool, right? Like I get to imagine myself with a strong Southern accent, with a drawl like none other. But I get to this really cool opportunity to think about where I was and who I am today. And I think that when I first started leading marches, I was so committed to change, and there was such a deep desire for progress that I think many of us feel, right, when we really start getting involved in this kind of work. And I thought that, oh, in order for us to have progress, in order for us to be successful in our fight for justice and equality, like I need to be the one to have power. Like I need to have influence. I need to be at the podium. I need to be doing this stuff, right? And I think that this was something that was very prevalent within my community, at least, of just saying like everyone felt like in order for us to make collective progress, they themselves needed to have all the power, right? And I think that kind of growing up in this, it convinced me that there was no power to be shared, right? That we're not dedicated to the same thing because you're older than I am, or you look different than I am, or we come from different places, right? Whereas as I got older and now we're working in organizations where everyone looks different and people are different ages and we're committed to different things and we have different priorities, but we are joined together by our collective hope for like a better tomorrow. I realized that this room for where change occurs, it is big enough for everyone. I realized that power must be shared. And when we're talking intergenerational collaboration, sometimes that doesn't mean 50-50 because we don't always have 50-50 to give. And this is something I think that we talked about even as a smaller group and planning for this is that many times you have us young people here who have this really unjaded desire to make change, but we don't know how, right? We don't know the methodology. We don't know what works. And I think that's where we can really take in a lot of advice from some of those older folks that have been here for a while. And to me, that's power sharing, right? Leveraging the privilege of age and finances to be able to open that door for more young people, that's power sharing. I mean, Leena and Angel both opening direct doors for seniors and young people to work together for both voices to be heard. That's power sharing. And so I think that this is a really cool question because I think for me, it gets me thinking about, this is what collaboration looks like today, right? And I think that it also pushes us to say, what is collaboration going to look like tomorrow, right? What is it going to look like in 5 years? And I think more so than a hope, I think that's a challenge on all of us to make it to those regions and to go past those marks.
Yeah,
Yeah. Mm.
yeah, it's amazing.
Yeah, it's obviously, Elijah, while you were speaking, the questions were like pouring in clearly for all of you. So clearly this stuff is landing with the audience that is here, and this is the audience I hope that you wanted to reach. So, okay, I just want to remind the 5 insights that Dillon went through to us, okay? We are not your children. Listen, period. Do not invite us for optics. I think what you have all just heard would really make it very hard for you to imagine inviting young people just for optics. We will match your energy. We show up vulnerable. You will invite vulnerability, as Leena so beautifully told us. And we want the power to change things, say the teens. But as Elijah really carefully showed us, like but with understanding of like what power makes sense and what makes sense at the age and level of experience teens are showing up with. So, just a quick Mentimeter moment here. Which of these insights do you most want to bring to life in your work? Um, that could be because you feel it's not there right now, or you know you have work to do. What are you going to leave here and have in your head? Yeah, listening, not your children, understanding the power. Yeah, I mean, there are so many things I'm taking from this. Um, and I think one of the things I've seen as we try to bring more youth perspective to designing the work we want to do with young people is that it sometimes takes more time. Like if we want to get input from the young people we want to work with, like we have to work on their schedule. Like we're having this meeting at Eastern time in the evening. That is not when we usually run our webinars, but we wanted young people to join after school, right? So um, perfect. We learned that the first time we started talking to young people about when they are available to do things like this. Um, I think recognizing that I think you've all been reacting to the wisdom of young people and not discounting people just because of their age is a huge thing that I'm just repeatedly reminded of. We have a lot of like, wait your turn in our culture. And I think hearing from the young people we've just heard from is a really incredible reminder that is really a very outdated idea. I'm going to ask to make sure we have everybody on the screen, and we do, and we have so many questions. So I'm going to throw out some questions, and really, I want anybody who feels ready to answer to jump in. Okay, so here's a biggie for any of the teenagers. So, what are the well-meaning things that older people tend to say that are actually not the right things to say? So, cross-generational communication often goes awry because one generation is using language or or that thing where somebody is kind of treating you maybe like their child or grandchild. Like, what does that look like to you? And yeah, real world examples. Welcome.
I think I have a response to this one. So, one thing that a lot of older people tend to say, and not everyone, but sometimes, is that older people will say things that come from a good place but aren't completely true. For example, phones ruined your generation. They mean well, but it overlooks like how much we use technology to learn, communicate, and like build relationships with older adults. And it's just a different way of connecting, not a worse one, but yeah, it's often taken pretty not in the best way.
Before we move on, like there's nodding. Angel, Elijah, do you want to add to that? It's a juicy question.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Leena. And I think another example that I might be able to provide is honestly just saying things like, oh yeah, that's a good idea, and just kind of like not really following through with that because oftentimes because we are young, like we really need to work with our older allies to push for actual like plans to become implemented into real things. And I did mention this in my video, but I think it just gets so hard when older allies are just like, yeah, this is like a great idea and just like never really do anything else to help us out with like the remainder of the project.
Yeah, that's another one like act, don't just talk. Like that's Elijah. I'm hearing those words, Elijah. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, I mean, Angel and Lena, they said it. I think especially with like the social media thing, like I feel like every panel I'm on, I always get asked the question of like, what is your opinion on social media? I'm like, it's like all things. Like it can be used for good, it can be used for bad. That is what it is. I think to the question specifically, something that I get told a lot is that like, oh, you speak really well for a kid, or you speak really well for, a young person, which thank you. I get where you're coming from. But me personally, I've been giving speeches since I was 10, and this is how I speak today is not how I spoke, 5 years ago. I think also for me, this may be a me thing though, is that touch is a really, I think, important part of this as well. I mean, I think sometimes adults are very quick to like hug and kiss you and things like that. And I see that it comes out of love. However, I think my space is still my space, and there's a degree that I want my body to be respected and I want my space to be respected. And if you're an adult that I respect, sometimes it can be a little difficult for me to say like, hey, like I appreciate the love, but don't touch me and don't hug me, right? Because I can come off kind of abrasive. And so maybe just something to kind of keep in mind. I think when you're meeting kids for the first time, but also like even with the kids in your own life too, like sometimes just ask before a hug is always a cool thing to do.
I love the specificity of these answers. So keep them very specific. This is super insightful. This question was asked for Angel, but I kind of want to know for all of you, what prompted or excited you to become civically engaged? Start, Angel, why don't you start? Because the question was pointed at you.
Yeah, totally. So I started my project mainly because I was the youth representative for my local neighborhood council. And from those monthly meetings, I just really learned a lot about how like decisions are made. And I just gained a lot of insight in general about like how our local government works and how constituent participation looks like and what that looks like when it's like super healthy. And when I was talking to a lot of my peers and my friends at school, I also learned that a lot of them wanted to spur some kind of change in society, like, but a lot of them also didn't know like where to start. So that's when I thought of like making an organization and then helping these people like register to vote in local elections, but also like helping them find local youth representative seats, which is something like a big project that I'm currently working on. And yeah, that is essentially why I began this project, just to help more of my peers get their voices out in like the community and help benefit like all of us. Yeah.
I'd love to hear quickly from each of you on this one. It's an important one. And by the way, Angel answered with like, as my youth representative, and I couldn't help wondering like, what were the steps before that? So just like that is a follow-up, Angel. Just tell us like how that even happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, ever since I was in middle school, so I started this position as youth representative when I was in ninth grade, and I'm currently a junior in high school. And ever since I was in middle school, I did debate, public speaking. That just brought me to be really interested in how society worked. And I thought the best way was to start from like the local government, because that's like, of course, like the community that I'm most exposed to. So I was looking for opportunities like that, and I stumbled across like my neighborhood council. And I looked at their website and I found that their youth representative seat was open. So I reached out and I was like asking like, can I get appointed? And then, I mean, yeah, and then I did get appointed as youth representative. So I'm, keeping that seat for 2 years.
Great. Leena, you want to go next on this? How did you get involved?
Yeah, so I got involved through like a couple different ways. Like my main one was through Golden Connections because it let me bring teens and seniors together. And specifically, I've been really into learning about ageism and I got like a certificate in it. And it helps, and Golden Connections has helped me to break that stereotype we often have about each other. And speaking at the C4A conference was another way I got to do that, like civically. I was like able to share a teen perspective, highlight the importance of intergenerational connection, and show that young people can be a part of the solutions, and to show how important it is when we like connect.
Great. Elijah, you want to take us home on this one?
Yeah, sure. So, for me, I led my first march when I was 10. I grew up in a really small community called Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. If you're on the East Coast, you probably passed through it on your way down south. And so I grew up there, and I was really personally just inspired by history. Like I was a huge nerd around this time, and I was like learning about like Fred Hampton and Angela Davis and Gloria Steinem and all these really cool people. Um, as well as one of my friends had confided in me that they had experienced child abuse. And me being 10 years old, I thought that I could change the world. And so I led a march when I was 10. And then, like, I think for me at least, like it kind of just snowballed from there. And so started doing speaking events, did a few philanthropic efforts. And then when I moved to Virginia in 2020, I had an opportunity to lobby for my first bill. And then a legislator was like, wait, don't just lobby, like actually do it. Like you're so upset about the lack of really cool bills being introduced. Like just introduce your own, which I think he was like low-key trying to check me. So I checked him back and I did it. And then from there, I've just been really involved in legislation, and that's been my recent love.
Oh, wow. Okay. We're shifting gears a little. This is a question that came from our friend Ken. And I think so many people are dealing with the thing that Ken asked, which is I have all caps, very few opportunities to interact with teens. When my kids were teens, I had tons of connections to their friends, but now that they're in their 30s, I do not have mechanisms to join with teens. How do we find the opportunities to engage with teens, especially if we don't have them already? And I want to add in this because Elijah really prompted this and like, considering like, and how do you make sure you're not doing it in inappropriate ways?
I can kind of speak to something that's at least specific to kind of the fields that we work in, which is a lot of like policy, legislation, stuff like that. And that's, a lot of the work that we're trying to do, a lot of like the change making work that we're trying to do, there's a really large gap when it comes to experience and that you just don't know, right? Like when I first started and first started leading my organization, I didn't know everything about the bill process. I didn't know all the kinds of bills that could be introduced. I didn't know the wide range of approaches when we're talking about solutions and things like that. And so for us, and this is also on young people, right? Like we as young people have to do a better job of reaching out to members of older generations, right, to ask for their advice. But I think that if there's anything in the world that you yourself or you're passionate about, you know a lot about, you could see other young people also being passionate about these things and them wanting to know stuff about it. I think even reaching out to that organization, reaching out to that group, sometimes just reaching out to that individual and saying like, hey, like I would love to pick your brain on a few things. I would love to ask you a few questions. I would love to get your thoughts rolling and come at it not as you trying to, I guess, give them a lot of advice, but maybe you trying to have a conversation with them. Because the advice that you may want to give is not always the advice that they need. But that conversation could show you saying, like, wow, I learned a really cool lesson when I was their age. And now I have an opportunity to share that lesson before they maybe have to experience some of the hardships associated with it, So that's just an idea, but I think a conversation is always a good first step.
Hmm. Anybody else have another tip for how to get to know teens?
I mean, personally, I found it really like beneficial when I went to a lot of these like local conferences. This may not be the case for everyone because I feel like I just live in an area where like there's a lot of these kinds of conferences for youth to attend and then kind of network with older allies as well. And the Los Angeles Congress of Neighborhoods is one example. And quite literally anyone can come here as long as you're like really ready to like talk with others and like take in new ideas about especially about like civic involvement. And I personally found it to be really helpful when I went to these like places and made connections with like not only other youth but also older adults. So I think older adults can do the same thing and make more connections with youth in these places.
Leena, any
Yeah, so I actually agree with what both of you said about this specifically about in my experience, community centers like schools and libraries, because that's how I got involved, and I think it's one of the easiest ways because they're there, and I feel like it's really perfect. Especially there's a lot of like schools or local libraries, places that you wouldn't expect. Like in my experience for older adults when I literally just looked for it and I genuinely just searched it up, I realized there were so many around me that I wasn't aware of. And yeah, that's
I live in New York City, and for years, I don't have any kids. So I was like, how am I going to meet young people in my city? and I'm a writer, and I got involved in this group, Girls Right Now, that worked with high school students. And I met so many teenagers, and I met them as peers. We were all writers coming together to write, and in what used to be called mentorship is now multi-generational writing community. Like they have gotten, like they have evolved in such a big way to this mutuality idea. So that was really rich for me to do it around an interest of mine. And you all are, politics is a big, kind of, civic issues are big for you. So I think you following your interest is another good one. Okay, we came up with some questions we had as like plans in case we didn't get enough questions, but I've gotten this question so many times, and it was one we were prepared for, which is, are most people your age as wise as you are?
I think I can start by answering this, but um, so to be honest, I think that I wouldn't say that like in general we're wiser than other like teens. It's just that maybe we've interacted with more older adults, getting different perspectives, and that may be cause us to have more different perspectives, which all other teens can have. And it's not about who's wiser, it's just who's like maybe like I feel like it's just about the perspectives that we have, but I don't think we're wiser than other teens.
Yeah, I think I would really have to agree with that. Short answer, like no, absolutely not. I go to a school where I am constantly surrounded by my peers and fellow students who are insanely bright about the things that they're talking about. I mean, they have a grasp of knowledge on things that I don't think that I could ever fully process. I mean, the other day we were having a conversation about how certain components of engineering is important to consider in foreign relationships, which I have no idea what that even means. You know what I mean? Like just to be so honest, I have no idea what that even means. And so I think so many of our peers are so incredibly like just bright and just it's a pleasure for me to see their brilliance because I feed off of it. I think what may set us apart a little bit is kind of like Leena said, is that we may have had different opportunities to interact with adults. And so communication may be a little bit easier for us versus with some of our peers. They tend to, surround themselves with each other. And I know that this is something I have had to kind of work on is like the art of code switching. And so how I talk with you all is not how I talk with my peers when we are, moving from conversations about pop culture to politics, right? And those are real conversations to have. But yeah, no, absolutely not. No.
Yeah, we have more here. Okay. Um, I thought this was really interesting. Somebody made the comment, um, Kate, I love this comment. A lot of us older people don't even know how much, about how effective legislation works. So we could learn this together. I am a former lawyer and I don't know all the ins and outs of how legislation work. It has to do with showing up at the meetings you all show up and engaging in the way that you have been engaging. There was another recommendation here that maybe we need to have some special elder council positions. Like, I think one of the reasons we're interested in this work is often older people, especially at the far older end of the spectrum, feel just as marginalized as teens feel. So I think there is a real affinity often between elders and teens that we're trying to kind of zoom into a little here. There's just a lot of funny things in the comments too. While many older adults are wise, many are knuckleheads. Um, yeah, there's so many interesting comments. We often share the chat, so I'm gonna allow people to dig into that later. Let me just see if there's any. Okay, one last in the realm of specificity, Elijah, can you give an example of an issue that you and your colleagues have worked to change? We'd love to have this brought to life a little bit.
Yeah. So I think there's a few, right? And depending on the issue, we approach it differently. Just because that's how it is, right? Different law, different legislators, different extent of controversy. But I'll be open and honest about really one of the more controversial areas that we've had to work on, and that's the issue of gun violence prevention. So, gun violence is the leading cause of death amongst young people. And gun violence is something that I think I can speak for everyone on the call when saying it is something that we as young people it's become very normalized to us, right? I mean, it's not uncommon for us to have an active shooter drill and then go right back to class as if nothing happened. And that is the expectation, right? Like that is the expectation that you're going to practice someone taking a firearm into your school, threatening your life, and then you're going to go back to your calc problem like you didn't just have that conversation in your own head, right? And so for us, the first step with this was education, right? Here's how it feels to be a student today. That was not something that a lot of legislators understood. And we had to have some hard conversations. And we had to say, like, hey, like, you're a father, you're a mother, and this is what your son and daughter are going to school to. Like, this is how this feels. Like, this is what that's like. And many of them were very open. I think they understood the gravity of the situation. And then you play politics and then you get wrapped up in that polarization, right? And understanding this, it was very important that we say this is not grounded in politics. This is grounded in how we can save lives. And this is grounded in how we can hear young people. This is grounded in how we can meet them where they are. This is grounded in how we can make solutions to a problem that is very much preventable, right? And I think that that's where we started saying, okay, what does gun regulations look like? What does additional mental health resources look like? What does peer support groups look like? And one by one, we began to legislate these. And so we have gun regulations going in last session, in this upcoming session. We have mental health funding going in last session, in this upcoming session. We're setting up peer support groups. We're encouraging students to establish these things at their schools in Virginia and across the country. I mean, there's so many ways, right? And we didn't know all of them. Like I was very much like, get guns out of people's hands right now. And it was another adult that said, hey, you can't just go around saying that, like you need something else. And this is how we do it, right? So there's a lot of intergenerational collaboration there, a lot of power sharing, a lot of leveraging those conversations, a lot of being vulnerable, right? I mean, we had students come in and talk about the panic attacks that they had during these active shooter drills. And then we also sat there while some legislators cried, imagining that their children were going through the same thing. And I think that more than anything, when we're fighting for this level of change, intergenerational collaboration, it's vulnerability. And it's you being willing to break down your walls and to open up your heart and to open up your mind and to be willing to allow someone else to learn from you to prevent horrible situations from happening. And I think that's what the foundation of this work is about. And it's why I'm so passionate about it.
Wow. Wow. We could stay on that topic for an entire separate conversation, but I think we have to kind of close now, but we're closing with a way to continue here. So I think we all know that it is rare to find ways that older and younger can come together as partners in the ways that we have been describing. And we want to make that really common. We want to normalize that. We know that it's hard. We know that it's messy. We know that there will be failures. But when there is true mutuality, it can be pretty magical. And I think we have seen moments of like, what does that look like? When Leena tells us, like, the elder talking about, her vulnerability about sewing, and Leena can say, I'm afraid nobody's going to show up. Like, these are the moments we're talking about that are real. So listen, if you are working to bring teens and elders together to collaborate, or you want to, we have a community of practice that's going to launch next month. It is a place to learn with your peers, to experiment, and to practice co-generating. This is for people working on these issues. We love it that, this is not a place for like, I need to find more intergenerational activity in my neighborhood, in my personal life. These are people who are like practitioners who are working to create these kinds of opportunities for others. So
yeah, and I'll just jump in. I think this is a very much a specific way that anybody who's ready to bring youngers, elders together for change can really join. So really excited that we have something tactical for folks, and the link to registers is below. So let's really close out with some practical wisdom from all of our panelists. So would love each person to share. Let's share one tip that each of us have around building intergenerational collaboration. So Leena, I will throw it to you first.
My tip is to stop assuming who's supposed to teach who and who's supposed to learn. When both sides fully show up, collaboration happens. And that's my tip.
Beautiful. Angel, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, and my tip is to listen to understand, not to speak. And that's because it's really important in a conversation to like fully understand what the other is saying, especially in an intergenerational context.
That's awesome. Elijah.
Yeah, I think I would just say like help young people in their lives find their own superpower, right? Like I was happy leading marches until someone said, "Hey, you should speak," and I was happy speaking until someone said, "Hey, you should write legislation," right? I would never have done those things if no one had the faith in me to be able to do it. They believed in me, so I believe in myself, and we get good work done.
Yes, and Marci, I'll have you do a tip as well.
Yeah, I'm gonna say like resist the urge to start with advice.
I love that. And yeah, my tip would be kind of and as we said throughout this, is just, I think, listen, is being open to conversations and be open to sometimes uncomfortable dialogues. Like it's not easy, it's not meant to be easy, and this is where we can really all lean in. So we just really want to thank all of the panelists, Elijah, Leena, Angel, Marci. Thanks for co-hosting this with me. So let's close it out, Marci.
Yeah, thanks also to our funders again, the Bezos Family Foundation and the Eisner Foundation, and to all of you. You were an awesome interactive audience. You were great, and I can tell you're going to go out and try to do this stuff in your own life. If you do that, we have lots of resources. We're going to be sending you a follow-up email as we always do. We hope you share the recording with others. And we also would like you to do a quick poll that we are going to launch right now. Just stay another minute because it really helps us to design these sessions. And we just really appreciate having you all here and so enthusiastically